In this labs video, I'm going to show you how to make this really cool music box. Check it out. Okay, as you can see, I have vcarve Pro up here. Now you can do this in vcarve Desktop or Aspire. I just happened to choose Pro because I had it right at my fingertips. And you'll see that I'm in the 2D view and I've got a heart drawn and a little angled line up there to the right, and or to the left, excuse me. And we'll talk about that line in just a second. Now, we're gonna flip over to a 3D view. We're gonna try to do most of this in the 3D view if we can. That would be really kind of nice. So there we have it, 3D view. My vectors are showing, which is nice. I'm happy with that. Because we'll be using the Moulding Toolpath for this, we need to know a few things about this cross section. So if you've never used the Moulding Toolpath before, we have a great video called How to Use the Moulding Toolpath, and you might want to check that out if you'd like to have some more in-depth information about the different steps. I'm only going to touch on the ones that we need to make what I want to make, that little heart. So that video is there available for you. But what you're going to need to do to use the Moulding Toolpath is you need a drive curve, so a curve that you're going to run along a cross section. The beauty of the Moulding Toolpath is it doesn't actually create a 3D component. It will actually use that cross section to define the cutting path of your tool. And it makes for a really quick, very accurate tool path. And with some of the features that we've added in, you can do a much better job actually than using a 3D component. So if you can use the Moulding Toolpath, it's fast, it's efficient, and you're gonna get a better end result, a better surface finish, because you're not doing a raster cut, you're actually following that curve. So it does turn out to be really quite nice. So we've got my drive curve here. It's this nice heart shape that I've already pre-drawn for us. And then we have this cross section. Now, what I want to point out with this cross section is its actual size. We are going to use we don't change the size of this cross section. So what you draw up for the cross section is what the Moulding Toolpath is going to use. So if I click that and then click it again, I can go ahead and hover over the width of this cross section is 8.89 millimeters. I'm not really sure why it's that dimension. That's just the way I drew it up. The real important one for me is this one. The height of this, or the depth of this, is 10 millimeters. And I've chosen that specifically because of the thickness of material that I'm going to be using. I only want to make sure that the Moulding Toolpath part of this is only 10 millimeters tall. I can add material below it if I'd like to raise it up, and I can remove material from above it if I need to. So I have a lot of control over how thick this piece of molding is going to be. So that 10 millimeters is going to be important, and also this 8.89 is going to be important a little later on when I talk about how I use this in the project. So let's jump over to the Toolpaths tab. And as always, we always suggest you do is check your material setup. And in this case, because I'm just showing you how to use this, the only important bit is I want to make sure I have enough thickness in my material. And right now you'll see that my material is set to be 12.7 millimeters. So that's perfect. My Moulding Toolpath will fit into that. And also my position is right at the very top of my material. So that's good to know too. So let's click OK. So let's jump right into the Moulding Toolpath. Again, if you haven't seen this before, then I really suggest you watch that video so you can get a really good in-depth look at what these features are. So the first thing we're going to need to do, as it says in the top, is we need to choose our drive rail and then hold down our Shift key and grab our cross section. And we're going to look in our 2D view for a minute. That way we can see the direction of the curves, which is important, and what side of the drive rail we're going to hang this cross section off of. So in my case, if you look in the 2D view, it's going to hang this cross section off the outside of this drive rail. And we're just going to simulate this toolpath as it is like this so you can see what's going to happen, and then we'll modify it. So the next bit we're going to need to worry about is where the toolpath is inside of my material. And again, this will give you control of how much material is below the bottom of that cross section, and also tell you how much material you should remove off the top before you go ahead and cut your Moulding Toolpath. Right now we're just going to leave it at the very top, but you can see you can just use the slider here and you can move it up and down if you'd like. It's up to you. We're going to use a 1/4 inch ball nose. Actually, we're going to select a different tool for that. We're going to select an 1/8 inch ball nose. We'll just select those whatever tool setup there, it doesn't really matter. And that's going to be our main tool that we're going to use to cut this with. And that's actually going to step down this cross section and hopefully make a nice smooth angle for us. We can vary our step over if we'd like to, which is a nice way of making sure that as you come down the side of something, if it's got a curve, we'll actually tighten up that step over as needed to give you a really nice finish. So if you like to use that feature, it's there for you. And also, if you have any flat regions on your cross section, you can decide whether or not you want to cut them with the 1/8 inch ball nose, or whether you'd like to use your clearance bit, in a second we'll talk about that, to cut those nice flat sort of shells if you'd like to, or the flat regions of your toolpath if it fits in there. And right now I'm told to skip them because there aren't any, but actually we'll just unclick that because it doesn't really matter. And then you can choose a clearance tool. Now this is the tool that's going to go in and do most of your clearance. So let's go ahead and select a different tool for that. We're going to use an 1/8 inch end mill for, I'll use a 1/4 inch end mill for that one. That's perfect. And we'll select that. And it says, I've got checked off machine flat regions. I can uncheck that because I don't have any flat regions. It really doesn't matter. But again, it would use that tool if there were any to go in and get rid of that first. And then it would skip those regions if I've decided to do that, if I have the skip flat regions button selected. So that makes sense, right? I don't want to go back and use that 1/8 inch ball nose to cut those areas that I've already cut with this tool. But I want to use this tool actually to clear out the material around it. It's almost like a 3D roughing toolpath, if you will. So that will remove a lot of the material before we go in with this small bit. We have a machining allowance, so I can leave some material behind. So let's leave around a 0.4 of a millimeter, which would be great. I'm going to uncheck create sharp corners. If the result of your molding toolpath when it comes to a sharp corner isn't quite right, then you can go ahead and tell it to create those sharp corners for you, but we'll just uncheck that for now. And the next bit is the boundary offset. Now, we're going to play a little bit with this in a little bit, but the boundary offset is how much outside or inside of that cross section you would like it to cut. Now, this is important because with this particular angle that I have, when I get to the very bottom of that, if I use, seeing as I'm using a round shaped tool, it's going to leave a cusp at the bottom, which may end up leaving some material behind if I choose to do a cutout pass, which I might want to remove. Or maybe at the very top, I want to have a flat ledge because I want to make sure that my material at the top of this molding toolpath is nice and flat. Then I can use this tool to ensure that, or this option to ensure that. I can go ahead and type in what I would like to, or I can just let the software decide for me. In this case, I'm going to let the software decide for me, and that'll be all right for right now. And let's calculate that. And let's flip over to our 3D view, and you'll see what we get. So we get this nice tool path. You can see the tool, the tool lines, or the wireframe for the tooling is going around the circle. It's not going up and down. It's actually following that drive rail, which is really nice. Should give us a nice finish. And I have two different tool paths over here. I've got a clearance tool path and a non-clearance one. So let's turn off the non-clearance one, and let's preview these one at a time. So this is going to be the big 1/4 inch end mills going in and removing the lion's share of that material for me. And then I can go ahead and run the actual clear, or the actual the ball nose tool here, which I'll get rid of all, to show me all my detail. So let's preview that visible tool path, and you'll see it's going to go in working from the top down and gives me a nice shape. So that works really well for this particular idea, where maybe I want to have the heart or the molding toolpath on the outside of the heart. In my case, that's not exactly what I want to have happen. If we look at the inside of the box here again, you'll see that I've got a flat edge, and this actually slopes down. So that's important to remember, that I'm actually cutting on the inside of this heart. So if we close it up and I put it aside again, let's go back to our 2D view for a moment. And we can control what side of the line we're going to have this cut on. Normally, if I right click on this line, you'll see I have the reverse direction option. If I select that, nothing happens. The arrows change, but normally what I would expect would happen would I'd actually hang my cross section off the inside of that vector, and that's not happening here. There's a couple different ways I can deal with this. One is I can cut the vector. So I could go ahead to the bottom node here, and I could cut that and then move those nodes just slightly apart so they don't actually overlap each other. That might give me the result that I want, but then I wouldn't have a nice sort of finish to the bottom of my heart. So in this case, that's probably not the best option. For me, I think the best option is going to be to actually cut this into 2 halves and actually have 2 molding tool paths cut. that I put back together again to make this insert for the inside of my box. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's close this down for a moment. And we are going to select this vector. Let's turn on our vectors in our 3D view, top down. Let's just go ahead and reset our preview, and I can hide. That looks good, perfect. Let's turn this back on again. Great. Let's go into my node mode, and let's just hover over this center one, and we're going to cut that. And then we're going to go down here and we're going to cut this guy. And then we can have a look and see what we get. So let's grab those set of nodes, and we'll just move them out of our way so we can see that we've actually cut that in half. Okay, let's go back to our pick tool for a second. Now let's try this again. Let's go back into our Moulding Toolpath, and we're going to use those same vectors again. Go into our 2D view for a minute, and you'll see that it's hung off the other side like we had originally. Now if I right click on this and I go reverse direction, now they're on the inside, and this is a little bit closer to what I'd like to have happen. So let's calculate that, and let's see what we have. And we'll preview that visible toolpath, or both those toolpaths. So there's the clearance tool again, and there we have this. Hey, we're getting there. It's pretty close. We've got that nice steep angle, but you'll notice here that this isn't quite right. The inside of that isn't quite right. It's actually cutting back this way. So even if I cut two of these and put them together, that's not going to work. So let's close this down, and let's turn that off for a second. And let's just undo some of that. Let's put this back together again. Okay, so this should actually be one solid thing. I can check by right-clicking on that, and you'll see that I don't have the option to join. So it's all one thing. Let's go back to our 3D view for a second. Let's pop over to our Design tab, and we're going to go ahead and fillet this. So let's hide this for a sec. Turn back on our 2D view, top down. Perfect. Let's go into our fillet for a second, and we're just going to fillet this a little bit in the middle. So let's fillet this about 0.635. I think that'll be all right. No, sorry. Let's make it, so 6.35 is the diameter of my tool. Let's divide that by 2 and make that the radius of my tool. And let's just go ahead and click that. That looks good. And we're also going to click this one down here. Okay, so what's happening, and what you saw a minute ago was we're actually hanging that profile off of that vector. So it doesn't actually ever turn around to get around the corner. So if I do this instead, and we go into node mode and we cut it here, and then we cut it at the bottom. Okay, and then we go back over to our toolpaths tab for a second, and we bring up our toolpath for that. Go to our 2D view for a second, and we right click on that, and we reverse the direction, and then we calculate that. Let's see what we get. Reset our preview, and we can see, reset our preview, and we'll preview that visible toolpath. Oops, sorry. We'll turn those back on. Boop, boop. Preview the visible toolpath. And it's going to do exactly the same thing. So how can we, my theory doesn't work. It's not actually wrapping it around. And the reason why it's doing that is because I've added in, if we take a look at this, we've actually asked it to use the automatic boundary offset. And so when this comes around the corner, there's actually a bit of the toolpath. If I close this down and just view the toolpath, is hanging out. And what our software won't let you do is you can't actually overlap yourself. We won't let you do that. So let's go ahead and remove that automatic boundary offset and see what happens. So let's go into there again. We'll remove that boundary offset and we'll recalculate that. Oh, and now you'll see what happens. We actually have it wrapping around properly to a nice, sharp, straight corner there, which is nice. And at the bottom, we've got this little bit here. It looks a little bit funny, but I don't think when we preview the visible toolpath, it's really going to matter much, and it's going to actually, we're going to cut that off anyway, so it doesn't matter. So let's just have a look at that. Let's reset all of those toolpaths. And let's preview the visible toolpath. Sorry about that. Let's see what we get. There's that fifth, the clearance tool. There we go. So if I manage to make a cutout pass, we can cut that off there. We can cut it off here, nice and straight, and that would give me the part that I need to go ahead and create the inside of this. So I think this process is going to work pretty good. So now that I have that kind of sorted out, and again, it all comes down to, let's just review this really quick, that this area right here with your boundary offset, make sure you choose the right option here that's going to work for you. And remember that we won't allow you to actually cross over each other. So especially if you have an inside really tight turn, we may actually throw up a warning that says we can't actually calculate this toolpath for you. So you might need to break it up into several different molding toolpaths or figure out a different solution for that. But check out this area here and play with it a little bit, and you hopefully will get the results that you need. So let's close this down. Let's go back to our 2D view for a second. Let's zoom out. Now, if we have a look at the file that you're going to get with your software, you're going to see that I've actually done a little bit of the work for you. So let's go ahead and have a look at that for a sec. So let's just go over to our sheets. Let's turn on my design sheet and let's zoom out a little bit. Let's double click on that and have a look at my design sheet. Okay, so this is where I start off most of my jobs. I have a piece of material, that's my job size. If I know what that is, if I don't, I just kind of throw in whatever I want so I can start designing something. I've got these two vectors here. These define the outside of my top and my bottom of my box. And I've got that same heart that you saw a second ago. Now, if I go up to my layers here, I can go ahead and turn on my molding toolpath. So as you saw a minute ago, I did exactly the same thing that you saw. This is my drive rail here. This is my cross section that I'm going to use. It's a little more fancy. There's still no flat areas in this, right? So if I have that 1/8 inch ball nose, I should be able to get to all of this stuff that I want. So that's good. And then what I've done is I've offsetted that line inwards, the width of this cross section. And that's important because I'm going to use part of this line to create my cutout pass. Now remember I talked about you might want to put a little shelf at the top of this, and you can use the boundary or your automatic boundary for that if you want to, but I couldn't. So for me to achieve that, what I need to do is actually create an offset the other way, the thickness of that top edge, which for me is this little size. This is the size right here, which is about 1/8 of an inch or so, 1/4 of an inch, I think it is. And I'll convert that to millimeters, but that's what it is right there. And so that's what I'm going to use that for. Now let's zip over to the actual sheet that I use to cut the two parts of. So if I go ahead and have a look at my sheet, sorry, over here to my heart insert sheet. So I've turned it on and it's over here. And we're going to turn on all of our layers so I can see everything that I need. Here we have it. We've got that half drive rail that you saw me make a minute ago, with that little radius in the corner there, the top and the bottom. I've cut it in half to fit my material so it looks really good. My cutout pass literally is those two offsetted vectors that you saw. I've just gone ahead and trimmed them down and connected them up with a straight line so I can use this as my cutout pass. And if I'm lucky, everything should work out okay. So let's have a look at the toolpaths that I've already created. Let's go to our 3D view. And we've got our two, now remember it's in two chunks, but we're gonna preview both of my clearance toolpaths first. So let's preview those two toolpaths. And that's going to be that 1/4 inch end mill that you saw. So we're going to go in and we're going to remove some of that. And then we're going to go and have a look at our actual clearing up of that area with that 1/8 inch ball nose. And if we look at that, you'll see that I've got a nice sort of shape going on there. And then I have a pocket. Now, you may ask why I've got this pocket here. Well, that's because remember how I'd said you can place your molding toolpath whatever you want inside of your material? Well, I did exactly that. And what the important bit was the distance below my cross section and the material above I needed to remove. So that's what this is for. This pocket will actually go ahead and remove some material above everything. So it doesn't matter what order I run these in because I didn't realize it until after that I needed that one or that I should have made it. So you can run that first if you want to and then do your two clearance toolpaths and then your two clearing up toolpaths with your 1/8 inch ball nose. But for me, I ran it in fourth in line. So let's go ahead and just play that. And you'll see that I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to make that nice shelf at the top that I want. And I've got an inside straight lip that I want to have at the bottom, which I'll make that using my cutout pass. And the last thing we're going to do is run my cutout pass. And what I've done with my cutout pass is I've been really careful, if I go to my 2D view for a second, to put my tabs in places where they aren't going to affect my end job. And in this case, I didn't want them on the inside of the heart. That was a bad idea, because if I sanded those roughly or I slipped while I was doing that, I'd end up having quite a mess. So my tabs are actually on the outside of the heart, which I think was a smart idea. So let's go ahead and preview that. And we'll see what we get. And there we have two pieces that in the end should theoretically fit together. Now, as you saw, I've already cut this. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of the footage that we shot earlier on me cutting this and testing to make sure that it all lines up perfectly. So I think that worked out really quite nicely. You can see how the clearance pass got rid of a lot of the material, went in with that small ball nose, and we actually made the molding toolpath. And then we used the pocket toolpath to pocket it down, so I had that nice flat top and it was the right thickness. And then I cut out past the tabs, so everything worked out as I expected. So let's go ahead now and look at the rest of the file that I used to make this music box with. So we're back in the software now, and you'll notice across the top here, I've got polyurethane varnish gloss. That's because I wasn't quite exactly sure what to use to finish off this box. Now, the main wood in this box is cherry, and so I did a little research online, and the answer that I got most of the time for how to finish cherry nicely was a polyurethane varnish and gloss, or a gloss finish. So that's why I have that note there. So don't ever feel bad about adding notes to your sheets if you need to remember certain things. It certainly was helpful when I had to order the varnish for this. Okay, so you see that now I still have it as we saw it a minute ago. I've got the layers set up. My design layers are turned on, and I also have my molding toolpath here. So let's turn on the rest of these now. So let's look at the hinge pockets. Now, these are those hidden hinges that I used, and what's nice about using a CNC to make something like this is you can be very accurate. And with these hidden hinges, I had to be really accurate with the position of the holes, 1 millimeter from the edge of the box top and bottom, and then also the depth had to be perfect. And so in this case, using my CNC, that was really easy to do. So I laid those out where they should be. So that's what those 4 holes are for. Now, if we have a look at my lid pockets, now this is the part that I had a lot of fun with, and I had to redesign a few times because when I first had the idea, I didn't have the actual electronics that I ordered from Amazon, which were surprisingly cheap for this. And when it came, it was the speaker, there was a little electronics board, or a little board, PCB board, and then there was a button and a battery. And so I wasn't sure of the size. So originally I had the whole underside of the top was going to be the actual where the electronics are going to be, but once I got them and I sourced my material, I found that I couldn't make it quite that big. So I ended up coming up with this idea. So this outside line is going to be a pocket for the insertion of the grid, or the, I guess it's a grid, or the, yeah, it's a grid that we're going to create with holes in it so I can hear the sound. And this inside one is a deeper pocket, and this is the pocket that is going to hold the electronics. And then I have this little pocket here, which again is going to hold the button that we get. And then I've got this square here is actually it's just a design line, you could call it, a reference line. It's actually the size of the button that I have, because I wanted to make sure that my heart that we're going to use for the button wasn't any bigger than the actual button thing, or the button, and it wasn't using this. So the idea is that we're going to pocket down all of these steps, and I'm going to pocket through the other side, and I'm going to create or cut a heart in a different material to use as a button. I thought that would look really quite nice. Well, I think it did look really quite nice in the end, where we've got this nice little button that's raised just slightly proud of the surface of the box. It's kind of like a little hidden thing, and when you press it, then it plays the the song or whatever happens to be stored on the little circuit board there. So that's pretty much it. That's all we needed for the inside of this. So let's go ahead and quickly flip over to our 3D view and let's preview those tool paths. We're just going to preview them all at once, and then we'll go back and have a look. So there's the pocket for the heart. Now that's exactly the 12mm thickness of my molding toolpath. I've got a 5mm pocket there for the actual grid. And that's the thickness of my material. And then we've got that bigger pocket for the electronics, and there's a little step down for the button. Now, I didn't mention, I had to put that step down there because I needed the material that was left between the front of the box and the inside of this to be the right thickness so that the button, when I glued it to, or the heart, when I glued it to the top of the button, would just stick out that right amount. So if you decide to make this, you're gonna have to probably modify this whole area to fit whatever electronics you're gonna use. But you can use my tooling for a good start. Now, I do wanna point out two things about these tool paths. The one that I used for the heart pocket, if I double click on that, it's a basic pocket tool path, but I had to use a pocket allowance. So, as you saw, I've gone ahead and I cut that 2 parts of the heart. And then when I cut the actual pocket for the heart, I'm gonna test fit them in. Now I had to test fit it a few times and come back and keep updating my pocket allowance to make that pocket a little bit bigger until it actually fit in there nice and snug. So that number is my number. You might need to modify that to make sure that you get the right extra room that you need to put your heart inserts in there. And I did the same with the cover, the area where the cover or the grid is going to be here. And that's actually, I wanted it to be loose enough that I could, if I needed to go ahead and reprogram the card, it was going to be easy to get out because I could unscrew these screws here and then I could pop out the grid that I made, and then you could go ahead and fiddle around. But I didn't want it to be too tight. It had to be loose enough that it almost falls out, but these screws will hold it in place so I can still get access to the card inside there, the electronics, so I can save a new song on there or charge it up if I need to. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that. Now let's have a look at the last sheet here that I've made, which is called cover and heart buttons. So we have a look in the 3D view. Actually, we'll just stay in the 2D view. So I've got this outside vector, which is the shape, the cutout path. I've got these 4 circles here in the corner, and those are going to be where I'm going to put my screws. Now, originally I thought I would just make holes, and then I went back and I had a little rethink about that, and I thought, well, maybe I'll use a V-bit to pocket those out with. That way I'll get that sort of chamfered look. So when I use my wood screws and I screw them in, I won't crack my wood. I can get them pretty flush. So that's what I did, and I think it worked out really well. This grid, it was this really simple grid to make. I just used the array copy tool and then deleted the extra circles I didn't need. These are just slightly bigger than the tool I'm going to use to cut them with. That way I could just simply go ahead and cut those out with pockets. And then I made 2 hearts. I made 2 hearts because I felt that if I lost one or one broke out, I'd have another one to have around. I still have another one kicking around here because I didn't need them. They actually fit just perfect the way they were. So let's just go ahead and have a look at those tool paths. So let's preview all those. And we'll see what we got. So there's the hearts. Now I had to pocket down a little bit to make the heart just thin enough so that it would be the right thickness to fit out of the top of this material what I wanted. So you're going to have to fiddle with that depending on what button you get. But you can take a look at that tool path to see what I did if you want to. We got the screw holes. They're there. They're using the V-bit there, which is great. And then we have the holes. Whole tool path, which just actually went and cut that little grid, let the sound out. Now what I ended up doing when I put this together is those holes were quite big and I could see the electronics through it, or felt I could. So I lined the back of that panel with a piece of just cardboard that I had, black cardboard that I had kicking around. And that way I could still put the speaker on that facing out or inside the box, and you wouldn't see the electronics. And I think it ends up looking quite aesthetically quite nice. And that's pretty much it. We've got everything that we need to cut this out with and actually start assembling it. So let's go ahead and have a look at some footage of me cutting out all the extra bits for this, the assembly, and then we'll come back and I might talk a little bit about what I might change next time around. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. All the parts worked together really well. I guess my top tips for this one would be that make sure that you measure the holes for your hidden hinges. If you're going to use that, it's really important that they're the right depth and everything. And when you go to assemble it, make sure the hinges are pointing pretty much straight on, or you're going to end up having an issue with that. Really, the Moulding Toolpath heart couldn't have turned out any better. I'm really happy with it. It fit in so nice and snug, you can hardly see the break in the heart, which is really, really quite nice. Yeah, everything worked really good. The button is nice. Everything's perfect. I like the finish. Again, something like this always comes down to the finish, and I'm happy with that. So anyway, if you like this video, could you please give it a thumbs up? If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. We'll be doing much more content like this in the future. If you have any comments or a suggestion about what I could do different next time, please leave them below in the comments, and I promise I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But for now, make some really fun stuff and some really memorable gifts, and I can't wait till I see you next time.